This is Housebound. I'm Chris.
I'm Holly.
I'm Ashlynn.
I'm Greg.
And you're invited. Welcome to Housebound, a podcast we made because we needed company. We talk about things that are on our minds, and today we're talking about secondary education and choosing our futures. So, out of the four of us, how many of us have actually gone to some kind of post-secondary education? College, university, tech school, whatever.
Everybody.
I have been to so much school.
Great. So then this is a great topic for us all to talk about. And we all graduated with high honors, so that's awesome. We will be doubling down on that. Yeah, Greg, maybe you can start us off so that I'm not the only one that's always talking at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah, I guess to give a little bit of background as to what I ended up doing was after high school, as is usually the pressure to, rather than jumping into a career right off the hop with your grade 12, you get pressured into going into like college or university, which was fine.
Definitely.
So then I did some 2 years of arts and crafts, aka arts and science, just doing some like prerequisite stuff to get into the College of Education. And at which point I applied for the College of Education with like decent grades, good references and everything like that, and then just did not get in. And when I asked them as to why that was, they said, "Oh, it was your online interview questions," which there were a few of them. And so then I asked, well, like what specifically? And so they said, oh, well, it was this one specifically. And the question was, what do you think about Canada becoming more multicultural? Which I had given some pros and some cons and things that we'll need to work on and all of that. So, and they said, well, actually, like you needed to be like 100% pretty much on the pros and like very few cons.
Oh.
So, and I had given
we don't
a pretty
want education. We just want education.
Well, they
Let's
actually
double
thought
back
that
to
I
that.
was.
Were you just like, no immigrants?
No.
Like is
No, and I've lived like overseas, so like I appreciate people of all cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs, and all of that. So, and I've been exposed to a lot of that. I think that was maybe what gave me like a more balanced approach, just because I know that there will be some things that are tricky and difficult, and because obviously there will be some barriers, and so. But yeah, they kind of thought that I was a racist, so pretty much to put it bluntly. But then and so then I ended up. That wasn't the option for me. And so then I found that there was a small Bible college here in the city that could take 2 years of the U of S. Because like at the time I was like, what am I going to do with this 2 years? Was it just all wasted? What's going on? So, and then, found out that they would actually take 2 years specifically from the U of S and then join it with one of their 2 years from their college to get a BA in Christian Studies, I believe was what I was kind of heading for. So, which was really sweet. Then the ironic thing was that later on, I found out that I had taken an Indigenous music class when I was at the U of S, to which I had done like a short kind of sort of like a hand-drawn video kind of cartoon type thing that essentially was just sort of explaining like the origin of the flute and from like Indigenous culture. And it was a fun project, and I kind of put it through and finished it, and that was sort of it. But then I found out that the College of Education had actually taken that video and was then now using it for as kind of an example of this is how we can fuse First Nations background into and fuse it into education and being able to kind of bring out some of that aspect into the education system. So, because
now, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, because now we have a teacher friend of our several friends that are teachers, but one specifically that was telling us there's been this mission to, or not mission, but this effort to have that Indigenous culture integrated within our curriculums so that it's not such a bizarre and shocking thing when we bring it up. It's not like, oh, we can only talk about them during
history,
social arts.
Social
was that like the elementary school version of like a history class is? But yeah, so like, so continue from where you left off, but I just thought it's interesting because that's definitely the direction that they're going.
It's also funny that they were like, no, you're too racist to teach our kids, but we're gonna take your stuff and we're gonna teach with your stuff.
Yeah, so that was a bit of the ironies. It ended up being that and Ashlynn will get into her story, but a part of it is actually going to the College of Education, and in which point she saw that video being played. So, yeah. And so it's just like things like that where it was kind of like, okay, this doesn't fully make sense. I feel like I could probably make a stink about this. But anyways, I decided to go to Bible college to beat the racism out of me. So, so I did 2 years at the Bible college. And in my last year, though, I had hardly any classes. And Ashlynn was like, Greg, all you're doing is like sitting around. You got to like do something with your life at this point. And so I thought, well, I could maybe look into what it would take to actually. Yeah, you did. You did. But there was definitely some like heavy pushing toward like you should try to do something more than just like a class or two a semester. So so then I actually looked into switching my degree in my last year and switching it from a BA in Christian Studies to a BA in Pastoral Ministry, which ended up turning into adding like the normal course load plus a couple additional courses plus like a 7-month internship. So at Arendelle Alliance Church. And so from that, then I actually I learned a lot about like time management, and because I had to like stay on top of things because during college and stuff, like you just sort of like do things like the night before, whereas this was like, nope, cannot do that. Will not be able to survive. So I had stuff done like a month early. Pretty much like all of my projects and stuff, just because I had to, in order to make sure that I had the space. So yeah, so that's kind of like my education story. I can maybe leave it there for now and let somebody else chat. So.
Well, I was just going to say, and this is fine if you don't want to like announce this to like the public in general, but like, can you elaborate on what you feel like was quote unquote too racist about your application? Like, obviously that's not the direction, that might not be the actual thing that they took. Like they went, this guy's a racist, but like obviously the question that was doubled down on was something in the application to do with how you feel about being more multicultural. And obviously it's not like you're against that. No. So do you have any idea as to why they thought like that wouldn't be a fit? I
think it was more just like the fact that I did have some things that like we will need to work on as a nation, you know, in order to like fully embrace the idea of like multiculturalism, you know, and that there will be some hurdles and some things. And just because, when you bring two people into a room who have totally different like backgrounds, whether it's culturally or religiously or and even how those will actually merge together for some people groups, and for others like us as a nation, it's not like we may have some amount of like Christian origin to like whether it be laws or like those sorts of things, and some amount of that, but like we as a nation, we are not Christian in the same way that like for example like a Middle Eastern country would be like specifically Islamic, right? So as a nation, that's what they embrace as a culture. So so that's definitely, I think there's just like, there are hurdles just with engaging with people who have a different worldview and different perspective that I think that we just need to work through. So, but maybe that's a topic for another podcast.
I think essentially you just misunderstood the question. Is that they were wanting a certain answer and you answered a different answer, and so there was that disconnect.
Perhaps, I think at the end of the day, it was a matter of that they were looking for a specific like like we are for multiculturalism and for Canada becoming this way. And I maybe took it in a more way that was construed as a bit more negatively toward that, which I'm definitely a pro for. And I think there is benefit to having a diverse country, and that kind of iron sharpens iron, and we're able to kind of make each other better. So.
For sure. Like it sounded initially, before Ashlynn added in her thought there, was that it was more of like a political correctness thing, where even if somebody on their application end of things kind of agreed with what you were saying, it's still one of those, oh, this guy's got some, we would know it to be probably a little bit of the people picking up on the religiosity of how we function in our day-to-day lives. And it's like, there's something there that seems a little bit off. We're not trying to, be politically incorrect necessarily, but we're also not striving to like love, peace, harmony, everybody, smoke a joint and just like get along, kumbaya. It's just like, you wrote what you felt like was an honest answer, and they were, and even if they had wanted to go forward with it, they were just kind of like, well, what would the superiors think if they looked on us admitting this person with this kind of worldview? Not because it gets into a really interesting territory of like, okay, are they stacking teachers all to be of a certain mindset? And you can go down a whole rabbit trail with a discussion on that. But I think what Ashlynn was saying was like, or maybe you just leaned a little bit too heavy this way when they were looking for somebody leaning the other way. And then you can kind of be like, well, who's to say? That was years ago, right? So
I think at the end of the day, they just didn't want to like take a risk on me potentially being a racist person, because that would not bode well with, again, their educational direction, as you were mentioning, that like we're trying to embrace people of different cultures and backgrounds within that. So
I think that there was a right answer and a wrong answer to that question. And they were looking for a particular answer. And so anything that wasn't that particular answer was like marked as wrong. Because I think that they are wanting people who obviously do embrace multiculturalism within Canada, and Greg does, but I'm just not confident that his answer showed that.
It's a little too black and white with no real gray. So
yeah, gotcha. Well, so Ashlynn, you saw this video. So what did your education journey look like up until what you're doing now with that?
So mine is similar to Greg in that I jumped around a little bit between what I thought I was going to get into and what I actually graduated with. So right after high school, I did a year of Bible school, a year towards, I think it was a bachelor's in Christian studies. But largely I was just taking that just for general life knowledge rather than an actual degree at the end of it. And then after that, I went to the U of S, took 2 years of arts and crafts as well. And my initial plan was to become a high school teacher with a major teaching subject of biology and a secondary teaching subject of chemistry. But then chemistry was far too challenging and totally different in university than it is in high school. And I discovered that I was much better at English than I ever would be at chemistry. So I switched so that my first teaching subject was still biology, but my second one was English. Got into the College of Education. Booyah.
Ooh, roasted.
In the College of Education, I did really well in my practicums and really well in my classes. My teachers really appreciated me and my students really appreciated me that I worked with. But I just couldn't see myself doing it long term. I could see myself very clearly as an extremely burnt out teacher in 3 to 5 years of doing that career. And even in other areas that I could be using that education degree, there was just nothing that I was passionate about. I thought I would be more excited about it, but once I actually got going, I just found the prep to be really overwhelming. And I think I liked biology a little bit more than I liked teenagers.
Who doesn't?
So, exactly. But it was super fun, and I still get to see my students sometimes around Saskatoon, and that's such a joy. But I had a conversation with a career counselor and a conversation with an academic advisor, and both of them highly recommended that I leave the college and just finish with either a biology or an English degree. I could do either of those with just one more year of schooling. So I opted for bio with really no idea of what I could do with that degree. So I finished one more year, went back to arts and crafts, finished my biology degree, and then ended up with a BSc in general biology. But yeah, while I was in the College of Education in my class that was essentially about how to teach a science class, they showed Greg's video, but Greg also had was hired. He missed this part, but Greg was hired by the College of Education to expand on that video and produce more curriculum about it. And so we were given all of Greg's curriculum to use in our classes.
That's very interesting. See, I was under the impression that they just like ripped off your video and like you had to no rights to it because it was for a school related project, but then you were just kind of like,
they did own his video, but then he was later hired by them to do a project where he would produce more material.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, I guess.
The main project that I worked on with them was to kind of expand like how to create more of these type of, like a guide to create these type of videos so that they can continue to expand that. So I spent many, many hours working on something that I don't know if it ended up turning into too much, but yeah.
Well, it got used once at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once for sure.
I thought you were going to say initially, like, they used my video as an example of how, like, not to integrate North American culture with, or like North American European culture and their understanding of indigenous origins for things. And I was just like, that's not good.
Yes. No, it was definitely used as a positive example of like, this is an exemplary performance. Here, watch it.
Rather than this is someone we denied entry to our college. Yeah.
Then later hired them.
Yeah, well, my story's real long. 'Cause I don't stop going to school ever.
Please do.
Please do. We will pay for it for all eternity. After high school, I went to a year of Bible college. And then it was always the plan to just go for a year. And then I decided to go to the U of R to do pre-med. So I did a year in pre-med at the U of R. But I didn't know anybody in Regina. And it was kind of a terrible city. Sorry, anybody from Regina that might be listening.
Yeah, we've just alienated half of our audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoops. Sorry. But yeah, I just knew nobody. And so I transferred to the U of S because I could keep going in the pre-med actual program that transfers between the two. And I knew some more people here in Saskatoon. So I transferred to Saskatoon. And then I was going through some of the courses for that and realized I do not want to be in charge of people's lives, like literally with their lives in my hands. It really made me nervous to think about like knowing everything about the medication interactions and then like accidentally giving them the wrong thing and causing a death. Like that freaked me out a lot. So I decided I would stop doing that, and I switched to anatomy and cell biology, and I finished my undergraduate degree in that. And then obviously there's zero jobs that you can get from that. So I like floundered for a couple of years doing work in medical facilities and kind of sciencey stuff in labs and such. And I also I worked for a company that just sends random workers to places.
A temp agency?
Yes, a temp. I temped for quite a while. In the middle of those 2 years, when I was tired of doing that and then working at an OBGYN clinic for a little while, I decided I would go back to school, to a tech school, and got my diploma in biotechnology. And I am now a lab technician. If I had the chance, I would go back and do it the opposite way around. Do technical school first, because you can work at whatever job you get, and then you can go to university on the side because university is so accessible. And then if you wanted a diploma or a bachelor's or whatever you wanted at the university, you could do that while you were making money. And that sounds so much better to me, because now there's just so much debt, just so much of it. But now I've been working for almost a year, and I feel myself being drawn back to the idea of maybe I could get my master's while I work online. Wouldn't that be great? A master's in biotechnology? Let's see. I haven't looked into it yet, but I really want that. I think I maybe want that. The end.
Well, so did you not feel like you had been properly guided through university into tech school? Or because you obviously did a lot of university, well, a lot, it's compared to others, maybe not that much, but you did a whole course. You did a 3-year program, and then you went and did a 2-year program, and you didn't get a job for the 3-year program. But I feel like if you had known that nobody was going to hire you, you wouldn't have gone for university, at least not first, like you said. So
yeah,
what happened
it
there?
was interesting when I went to talk to advisors about just switching from the pre-med course or program into a regular arts and science program. I spoke with a couple of different advisors, and they all assured me, yes, there are jobs at the end of this, which I thought was really weird because they never gave me any specific examples that could be used for it. But I was young and stupid and ignorant, and they were like, yes, you can get a job. And I was like, okay, and did it anyway. And then it actually, the degree that I have is for a 3-year degree, but it took me 5 years because I took a year off in between, and then that extra year happened to be because I went to an advisor about which classes I needed in order to finish this, and they advised me incorrectly, so I had to do an extra whole year because of when classes were available. So my last year, much like Greg's, was sparse for classes and work, but yeah, it was an extra whole year of tuition, which was a huge kick in the teeth. But yeah, I would have done it the other way around had I the chance. For sure.
I feel like my post-secondary education journey is very short. I basically started out like most others coming out of grade 12. Everybody seemed to know what they wanted to do, although now that I think back on it, like 75% of the people were going to university, but only about 25% of those 75% of my class actually were going into something other than arts and sciences. So arts and sciences is like a foundational course for those of you that aren't like aware of how that kind of works. It's like a set of classes, and there's classes you can choose within that. You don't all take the exact same classes as each other, but it's kind of like a foundational year or two of classes that gets you into a few different options depending on where you want to go, and you can build on those classes and take additional and separate classes as you go along. And so it's not a bad thing. But a lot of these people, it was very clear that they were just doing that because they had no idea what exactly they wanted to go into. And usually that first year or two of art and sciences, if you got a very specific direction that you're going, you can not necessarily skip all of those classes, but you can front load your education, your post-secondary education, with the classes that are most necessary, and you can, you get yourself there a year earlier or something like that. And when it's a year of tuition, yes, that adds up, right? So not necessarily a bad thing, but definitely I was definitely very aware that I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I did not have a desire to jump into university and spend money that I didn't have taking classes that I had no desire to use. So I spent 3 years just working and just menial jobs, nothing above like $12 an hour at that time, especially because minimum wage was like around 10-ish or 10 and a half. I can't remember what it was in 2009 there. But I did get a bursary that gave me a certain amount of money. I can't remember what it was. I think possibly maybe $2,000 towards post-secondary education. But the stipulation was I had to use that within 3 years. So when I finally got around to deciding I will take a year of school, it was a year of Bible school because my parents made a very big point of pushing all four of us kids in the family to do at least a year of Bible college, just to get a biblical foundation for what you believed going into the real world. Not that it was supposed to replace contemporary education, but it was supposed to give a foundation to that. And so I just decided, okay, well, if I can use this at like the last, in the last few days of this bursary, not let it go to waste, and use this, because I still hadn't decided what I wanted to do, then I'll do that. And so I did it. I took a year of classes. I didn't really feel any specific desire to return, which to me was fine. So I didn't. I moved back to Saskatoon. I moved back to the city, and I just kept picking up jobs. But the thing that hurt my job and work life was the fact that I kept going away every summer to a camp to work as staff member there for, I think, the better part of 7 or 8 years in a row. And that really hindered I would always have to leave a job, go to camp, come back and find a job. So that was probably, looking back on that aspect of it was a poor decision on my part, but I don't for a minute regret going to the camp each summer. It definitely helped me grow in my faith a lot more, just being involved with that, which I think was great as an extension of my Bible college year. And I still didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do after that. And so through that camp, I grew a love of filming and whatnot, around a little bit around like social media and mostly the art of filming. And so when I came back a couple years after Bible school, I looked into Vancouver Film School, and they do basically like a full year. Well, at the time, the program that existed in the school that existed did like a full year, like 3 semesters back to back to back. And it was basically September to September, no summer break. It was just a full 365 days of school. And then you did 2 of those for a degree or something like that. You had different options, but it was also expensive. Ching! And it's in Vancouver, which is an expensive place. So I ultimately decided not to do that, and instead taught myself a lot in my downtime, just taught myself a lot and kept playing around with cameras and stuff. And eventually, so I guess that was 2009 that I graduated from high school, and it was 2017 that I started my own business for video, just on the side. And that helped me 2.5 years later, that helped me land the job that I have now, which is working for a company that does photography and film. And I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I'm fine if that's all that couple of years of having my own business leads to. I'm fine with that merging me right into the next chapter of my life, working for somebody else. I don't really desire necessarily to work for myself for my whole life. I have aspirations to do all kinds of different things and tackle different kinds of projects and whatnot, but I don't have this maddening desire to be so in control of my own life that I have to have my own business. So I'm quite content with that. But it's like a weird, like I still, if you like gun to my head, do you want to do this until the day that you die? Video production, like maybe, but I also still don't desire to go back to school. Like I don't hate school specifically, but I don't have a particular direction that I want to go for school. I don't want to go into education particularly. I don't want to go into business. So I don't know. Probably there's services out there that will sit down with you and really help you map out what your desires are and figure out what you could do for schooling. But it's just interesting because this is kind of stuff that they never really touched on this in high school for me. It was always, when you get out of high school, there was, like Greg said, this expectation to move into college of some kind. And from what I experienced, people were being kind of pushed into there out of a sense of responsibility or an expectation of you're an adult now, so you have to go to college or university. But not a whole lot of us had an actual desire to do anything yet. And some of the people that I've seen have stopped school, and I don't know what they're doing now. And some of them have gone all the way through medicine. So that's been like 10 years. So maybe they just finished. Like, I don't know. Medicine's brutal. Like Holly was saying, as unfortunate as it is to have this extra year of debt for taking an extra like half course load of a year or something like that. I just want to say to anybody listening that's considering school, I don't want to harp on post-secondary education. And we're just talking about like our own experiences with it here, which everybody's going to have a different experience. But something that I've noted is that don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The debt that you accrue getting into school is like 100% unavoidable and necessary. You might be one of those like wealthy, rich families that your parents pay for your schooling, and that probably sounded pretty biasedly aggressive towards you there, how I just said that. But what I mean is like you might have the means to do that, and that's awesome because like that's such a gift. But the majority of people do not have that. And so you're going to, like, this isn't the 1940s and 50s. Your grandparents and parents might have been able to get by, doing a full course load, being engaged or married, and also working a part-time or full-time job, and the minimum wage paid for everything. It does not now. No matter what somebody tells you, it does not. And so be sensible. Don't go to school for 80 years and just go, well, the debt was necessary.
But I want
but
to.
Also don't but also don't shy away from it, because if there's something that you want to pursue, I would say to the most responsible means that you can, go ahead and pursue it, because it's worth learning. There are great professors out there, as I'm sure all of us have experienced at least one high school or elementary teacher or college teacher that's really stuck and resonated with us because of how well they taught and how great they were as a person. You can look into some of these really great experiences and you can learn a lot and you can pursue a career. And like, that's ultimately what the education is supposed to be there for.
Well, and it's interesting too, like, I don't regret my university time at all. Even though I'm frustrated with the debt, and I'm frustrated that it took more time than it should have, and like things like that. I don't regret actually deciding to go and learn, because it taught me a lot more things than just what it was supposed to teach me. And also it molds you and forms you, and brought me together with the people who are like my best friends now and things like that, right? So education is never a waste of time. But yeah, make good choices about your money, but it's not a waste of time. But
Yeah,
make good
like
choices.
I think that, like, I mean, it's interesting because there's a few different things that I'm just like hearing from all of our different stories. I mean, for one thing, like with Chris, the fact that you were able to self-learn your videography rather than having to, spend a bunch of money on, a couple years of going to school. Like I think there's pros and cons to that, but like
for sure.
Obviously that was enough for you to like that drive to actually like self-learn and self-teach opened up a door for you without that requirement of having to, spend a bunch of money, which is really cool. And then like, I think another thing that's that is interesting is that, yeah, like there is that pressure to do some form of post-secondary. But I think the important thing is that like you don't need to cave into that pressure necessarily. You can self-learn, you can do your own thing. I think it's just a matter of like, if you do choose to do that, don't get into like a slump where you lose your drive. Because I think what's great about schooling is that you're able to actually like, there is something that's driving you forward toward a goal. And I think that is one of the major things that helps, is that there's an end goal, there's a motivation, and there's a drive that gets you up each morning and something to pursue. So, so I think that's a big thing, is that like you can do your own thing apart from post-secondary, and you can get away with not having to spend a ton of money on that. But if you're not self-learning and if you're not driving yourself to do new things, I think you can end up just, working the average job that isn't going to make you much beyond minimum, and is going to just be the same kind of routine thing. And so, I think, and there's not necessarily anything fully wrong with that, but it will, I think there is something to having a pursuit and something to figuring out yourself and what are your interests and how can you contribute to society in a way that makes you excited and makes you passionate. So
for me, one of the things that I loved about university had nothing to do with the classes whatsoever or anything that I was learning. While I was in university, I was involved in a Christian organization called Power to Change, which was immensely meaningful to me. I was able to get so much really good leadership experience and organizational experience and speaking experience, make good friendships, and just be able to practice my faith in so many really neat and interesting ways. And for myself, I mean, I do have a job right now that uses my degree. I'm very fortunate that I was able to find one. I know a lot of people who
50-50.
graduated with a general biology. Yeah, with general biology, there's not necessarily a promised job afterwards. But I was really glad that I have one. But for myself, I think that it would still be worth it just for that experience, even if I wasn't able to get a biology job afterwards, because the experience that I had in Power to Change was so meaningful to me. So that for me, that was what made schooling worth it.
Yeah, fair enough. What I was going to say was the paradox of it all is it kind of off of what Greg's last comments were there, is that have goals, have dreams and things that you want to achieve, but then coming out of grade 12 unless you've really started thinking about it and have really been discussing it with your parents or some good solid friends or counselors or teachers for like the last year or two of your high school life, I should say, you're still just hardly not a kid anymore. And you often, because you're still growing,
you're hardly not a kid
because
anymore. Some of those kids are so much more adult than you think they are. They could have been adults years ago when they were 12. We've just extended the length of childhood because of schooling systems.
I'm talking about the maturity of the majority.
Some of those kids take care of their brothers and sisters, and they are running their households.
Okay, I'm talking about the majority.
Talk about your own school, maybe. You're crazy.
Okay, I'm talking about the majority based on the fact that I've had 3 siblings that have all graduated, and I have witnessed the graduation class of all 3 of my siblings. And there has been quite a spread between us of years. So it's not just from my own observation, because I didn't note this when I was graduating. When I was graduating, I was scared to become, like, quote unquote, an adult. But what I was meaning to say was the paradox of it all is that you should have these goals, but as somebody who's just starting and just maybe even in the middle of learning how to mature, and you will be maturing over the next several years and becoming, forming that foundation of who you are, that's when you start to realize and develop these goals and these dreams and interests. You might have before already decided, this is the direction I'm going to go, and that's fine. Then I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about the people that leave elementary and high school, move into what, quote unquote, is the real world, and suddenly you have to have your life all planned out, but you've just hardly started planning it. And so it's this like pressurous time for these students, these young adults, and we put so much expectation on them and on ourselves, but there's no way that they can live up to that. So
I don't know. I know a lot of grade 12 students that know what they want to do, and they do a fantastic job of pursuing that. My only recommendation would be that if you start arts and science and you have absolutely no idea what to do, that arts and science will not necessarily tell you what you're good at or what you should do.
Right.
You still have to figure that out.
Yeah, but I think another thing is that at university, though, you do find out that there are a lot of people who have a lot of areas where they need to grow. And a lot of, whether it's just be like, I think we all can attest to struggling with that idea of procrastination, right? And like waiting until the last minute to do something. And that's definitely an area that's more, that is like an immaturity. Like you could have done it before, but you chose not to. And so, and I can attest to many early morning, kind of grabbing like a couple hours of sleep, quickly finishing up the project, printing it out, and walking to the class, and the class has just ended that I was supposed to have attended, and I walk in and I handed the assignment, right? So
that's so crazy.
Yeah. So that's an example of where I should have definitively done better with my life at that point. There were better choices set before me, but I chose not to do it. And that was a learning process where now I'm like, okay, I feel like A, a cup of coffee, and B, I feel like crap. So I'm never going to do that again. So, yeah. So
but you did the next week.
No, I never did that to that extreme. So, but I think these are all learning processes, and we're going to make mistakes. And so, but, yeah. And I think that's just a part of life, is that we're going to have to learn and to grow up and to mature. And so, so it's not to say that people don't have the ability, the capacity to make those big, epic, life-changing decisions when they hit grade 12. But I do think there is lots of areas to grow in, regardless. And that's kind of what university does for everybody, as well as just whatever you choose to do after grade 12, whether it's a job or pursuing education, whatever it is, you're going to find areas where you're going to need to grow. So
I agree with that wholeheartedly, because everyone needs to grow in different ways in different times. But I think it's so funny because I was, and probably am still because I want to go back to school, the exact and utter opposite of that. Like you were talking about by the end of your school career that you were getting things done a month early. Well, that's how I was at the beginning of my school career.
Yeah, same.
Like Chris was joking earlier that we all graduated with high honors because he was probably looked to the side and saw my degree on the wall there that says high honors, because I was like, I want high honors and I'll get it even if it kills everyone else. But it wouldn't kill me because I could do it. Yeah.
No, it was mostly a joke because I figured most of us didn't achieve that. But yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah. But you're right. Everybody does need to grow. Yeah, I agree.
So the things that we can take away from this are that everybody's education experience is going to be very different. Even the negative experiences that we've had within the education system and just about education in general and how that applies forward to the careers we do or don't have in those fields today doesn't negate the need for it or the necessity of it. These have just been our happenings with it.
Yeah, like I think ultimately everybody's education is gonna, post-secondary education, whatever it looks like, is gonna be different, and it's gonna be disappointing probably.
Yeah.
But it's going to be meaningful, I think, is the thing at the end of the day. So
Sure.
However that looks. But.
That's fair.
Yeah. Good talk.